The shovel and the pick. It's a job. It's a job.
Tom Waits is an American blues slash jazz slash experimental singer, songwriter, and musician. He started out as a jazz musician and singer in 1971, vocal jazz, and he morphed into more blues folk area. And then as time went on, he got some decidedly experimental elements going on in his music. He's created a kind of hobo slash beat poet persona. He's been incredibly successful worldwide. He's also worked as an actor. Since his first album came out in 1973, he's had 17 more. Hi, my name's Dan. So this is a request review. So let's just step backwards slightly and tell you. So most of the videos on this channel are a series of reviews of the 3,000 greatest albums of all time, according to a site called Clean Music, details of which I'm not going to go into right now. But every now and again, I step off piste and do a review that is not from the list. And some of those are request reviews. This one was requested by a YouTube user called The Foul Quince, who's actually one of my regular commenters on my reviews. So, hey Quince, good to have you with us. He requested this about 3 months ago, and I've finally got around to doing it. So this is a response to, I'd done a review for Alice by Tom Waits, and Alice was released at the same time as this album, Blood Money, and this was similar to Alice's music from a play, kind of a musical play that he'd been involved in creating in Europe. I believe it released in Copenhagen, was kind of staged in Copenhagen for the first time, but I'm not quite sure where else. And my first impressions of this was that the word that came to mind was grotesque. Not necessarily in a bad way, but it felt a bit like a twisted cabaret in some dark comedy setting or other. So musically, it's a cross between, what can I want to say, the Tom Waits folk blues roots stuff that he has done in the past, with a particular emphasis on New Orleans jazz and brass, and cross that with kind of European cabaret stuff, particularly the German area. It's got elements of kind of the umpart and umpapa stuff, and there's semitone runs which always sound like they're done from a circus or something like that. It has that kind of carnival feel to it, carnival not in the New Orleans sense. So musically, it's the kind of short songs, quite punchy in that sense. There may be the themes for the songs might make more sense if I knew the play, and I don't. So I can only take them as isolated songs. There's lots of all sorts of interesting sounds going on here in the music. So there's some quite odd sounds that are used for percussion, particularly, but there's use of classical instruments, particularly woodwind, in here. So things like oboes and saxophones and stuff. But there's also novelty instruments like a toy piano and a thing called a stroke violin. And these are all used to get particular textures, and it definitely feels like quite a textural album in that sense. The recording was very rich. It all jumps off the page at you, and it's kind of, again, it's got this kind of otherworldly sense to it. Tom Waits has got and uses a very gravelly voice, but he uses varied tones in different songs in this. There are some songs where he goes down this route of almost grunting the words, which is but with words, which is obviously very kind of affected, so it's something he's doing on purpose. I don't really know why he feels the need to sing songs in this way, but it adds to that kind of grotesque feeling of it, I would say. Songs are about, well, they're about all sorts of things, but it's generally kind of dark and sorrowful misery, but somehow kind of the melancholy has got a kind of fantasy element to it. Some of them are a bit more optimistic. So my first time I listened through this, I tend to listen through albums twice for a review. My first time I was kind of going, basically, this is bizarre. And that's possibly even compared to other Tom Waits albums, and I've listened to quite a few now because I've reviewed them over the years. The second time, though, I got over my initial reaction to it, and I quite enjoyed it. I don't know if it was to do with listening to it in a different setting, maybe, but I think maybe it was just familiarity meant that I'd got over the initial, what on earth is going on here? I remembered quite a lot of the songs from the first listen, which is always a good sign, I think, in terms of things being memorable. So this combination of Tom Waits' roots music and Cabaret kind of works. I think, I'm not a Tom Waits expert, but I get the impression that at this point in time when this album was done, he'd already gone down quite a bizarre route anyway. And I think it kind of fitted with where he was going. He's always seemed to me to have this really kind of dark humour to the stuff that he does, and I think it works quite well in that. I want to highlight one track in particular, which is an instrumental track, which is called Calliope, which is one of the... it's just very kind of chaotic and discordant, but it's quite an interesting track. So overall, I'd say maybe it's a bit of an acquired taste. Normally, I'd maybe say for something like this that it's not for everybody. I think that's probably true, but I feel like my exposure to Tom Waits over the years is making me mellow towards him and appreciate him more. So that makes me feel like there's interesting amount of depth in here that can be dug into as you listen to Tom Waits. So, yeah, quite liked it. I think it's fairly obvious from Fel Quince's comments that he likes this considerably more than the album Alice, which I'd originally reviewed. I don't think I would say that I feel that strong a distinction between the two, but I probably like this one very slightly more. And for everybody else in the world, if you want to tell me what you think of this album, I'd love to hear from you. So please do talk to me through the comment box. And that's it from me for now.
Why be sweet? Why be careful? Why be kind? A man has only one thing on his mind. Why ask politely? Why go lightly? Why say please? They only want to get you on your knees. There's a few things that I never